notice that how I do my work up here, and then when I want to test it, I click on that run button over here, the one here, and then I can put in my test code down here. And I find it more convenient to do it like that because over here I can build up things in peace. And then if I want to try something out, then I can do it down here. So that was the sense why they give you these two panes. As I was working through this, I noticed that I had to reference the second part of the expression when you have something like the plus, the times, and then the x and the 1. This is the first, the second, and the third. I had to reference the second and the third part several times. First of all, notice that they're functions to give you the second and the third. So first is a primitive, and second is actually defined as the first of the rest. Third is the first of the rest of the rest. But you have these at your disposal. And so as soon as I find myself using a variable more than once, then I put it in the left block, and that makes the code a lot less confusing. And so that's something I've learned over time. So even here, when I saw that I have to compute the derivative twice, I was very tempted to just move it up there in the left block, and I should have probably done that. Would be nice if you had some refactoring like you have in Eclipse, but you don't. And so you kind of want to use cond instead of if-else's, because the if-else's move all the way over, and that's very tedious. So cond is kind of your friend if you have if-else, 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 if-else. And I struggled with, I used an equal sign here, and it turned out that was only for numbers. And then that's kind of a nasty thing that every time you learn a new language, you run into these like piddly little things, equal versus EQUAL or EQ or whatever. And how did I find there was EQ question mark? By trying out all 4 different possibilities that I could imagine down here and watching the error messages. I could have read it up in the language manual, but for somehow I find it faster to just experiment. And then I had to find out whether something was a list or a number. And in Ruby, these things work great, right? You say something with a question mark, and I just tried it out because I dimly remembered that maybe in Schema was the same thing, and sure enough, it was. So that's why the pain was your friend. And the folks up front can witness that I really was clueless about it, and I tried it out in real time. And finally, list is your friend, because oftentimes you need to build up a list on the fly, particularly when you do this kind of meta-programming where you build up code on the fly. And of course, you can make a list by using, well, if you use quotes, once you have the quote, nothing in it is interpreted anymore. So that doesn't really work for dynamic lists. You could use cons, but the cons constructs nest very quickly. So list is kind of your friend. List takes whatever is inside and spits it up as a list. So essentially, it drops this stuff, but it continues to evaluate what goes on in here. So you want to have it as part of your vocabulary. All right, so that's what I wanted to point out here. Hopefully the movie will capture this so you don't have to retype this in rapid speed. But with these very recursive things, once I got past these technical issues, the rest kind of wrote itself, because I said, what is the derivative of a sum? It is the sum of the derivatives. What is the derivative of a product? It's a sum of the product of the first times the derivative of the second, and the product of the second times the derivative of the first. And so once you kind of get the feeling for it, your brain has to be able to put these parentheses before and after. And of course, after a couple of nesting levels, my brain gives out. And then I have to just type them in and watch where the parentheses matching goes. So sometimes what I actually do when I get confused is I erase a couple of them, and then I just kind of watch where they go. And, well, what are you going to do, right? I mean, it's, and that's basically the tools that I have to solve a problem like that. And as you can see,